It had been 10 years since I became what I now call a stone wife. You know, the kind who quietly takes care of everything, never complains, and blends into the walls of her own home. I was 41 when it started, but at 51, the silence in my life had become deafening. My husband Henry and I hadn't shared a bed for 2 years. Not that I missed the routine of being ignored nightly. We lived like ghosts, brushing past each other in the hallway, polite but detached, as if we were nothing more than roommates with a shared mortgage. Then, one evening, something happened. Something that didn't involve my husband, but my son. George had just turned 10. He'd been sitting on the couch, tapping away on his tablet, when I asked him to take out the trash. He didn't even look at me. "You do nothing all day," he muttered with that casual cruelty only children seem to master. "You don't understand anything. Just stay out of my business." His words hit me with more force than anything Henry had ever said, or didn't say. I froze mid-step, trash bag still dangling from my hand. It wasn't just that he said it. It was how easily it came out of his mouth, like he was repeating something he'd already heard a dozen times. From who? I wondered. I went to my room, closed the door quietly, and buried my face in my pillow. And I cried. God, I cried until I felt hollow, like my tears had drained every last part of me that still believed I mattered to someone. My pillowcase smelt like detergent and old disappointment. When I finally sat up, the mirror on my vanity caught my eye. I barely recognized the woman staring at me. Puffy eyes, deep lines etched around my mouth, and hair pulled into the same lazy bun I wore every day. Something about that reflection made me sit up a little straighter. I opened the drawer and found a tube of lipstick. It was expired, dusty, and the color was 2 shades too pale, but I put it on anyway. I added some old foundation, uneven and cakey. Then I pulled out a dress I hadn't worn in 3 years, navy blue with the waistline that used to flatter me. I squeezed into it. It was tight. But when I looked in the mirror again, I didn't see pathetic. I saw potential. I took a selfie. Then, on a whim, I posted it to Reddit with the caption, "What do I need to improve? Ladies, please give me advice." I should have known better. Within an hour, the comments poured in, and not in a "you go girl" kind of way. Built like a refrigerator. "You don't need advice, you need a miracle. Ma'am, this isn't a glow-up, it's a cry for help." Somehow, it was worse coming from strangers. At least my husband had the decency to ignore me quietly. These people tore me apart word by word, like piranhas feasting on my dignity. But then I saw it, buried between the sarcasm and fat-shaming. Sunny Bunny 92. First, get a job. Second, throw out every piece of clothing you own and buy new ones. Third, eat better, move more. If you learn to love yourself, someone else will too. That comment stopped me cold. Not because it was particularly kind, but because it was real. It wasn't pity, it was a plan. And for the first time in a long, long time, I had a plan. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up making lists, grocery lists, job lists, habit trackers, calorie counters. I Googled how to re-enter the workforce after 10 years and best jobs for women over 50 with no degree. Spoiler alert, it's depressing. But by sunrise, I had something I hadn't had in years: momentum. Old people always say, nothing changes until the pain of staying the same outweighs the fear of change. They're not wrong. But here's my add-on. Sometimes you have to hit emotional rock bottom with a plastic grocery bag in your hand before you realize you're allowed to rewrite your own story. And did you know that in ancient Japan, if a woman wanted to leave her husband, she just had to shave her eyebrows and go to a temple? It was considered a soft divorce signal. I guess Reddit is my temple now. The next morning, I pulled on my old sneakers, ones I'd bought on sale a decade ago and barely used, and walked to the nearest supermarket. It was only a 12-minute walk, but it felt like a pilgrimage. Each step was stiff, foreign. My knees ached, my back protested. But I kept going, clutching a folded resume I'd typed up the night before using a Word template and what I could remember about formatting from 2002. The store manager was a tall man named Eric with thinning hair and an expression that screamed, "I'm 5 minutes from quitting." He looked at my resume for all of 10 seconds before saying, "Can you lift 25 pounds repeatedly?" I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure. He gave a tired shrug. "Okay, start Monday, shelf stocking, graveyard shift." I blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that," he said, already walking away. "Bring ID." So I had a job, a real one. Not glamorous, not fulfilling, but mine. Later that afternoon, I checked the community bulletin board near the post office. A flyer caught my eye. "Early morning milk delivery driver needed. Must be punctual. $600 a month." I pulled the number tab off the flyer. 2 hours later, I was hired for that too. The guy didn't even ask for my name, just whether I could drive stick and be there at 5 a.m. "Absolutely," I lied. I hadn't driven stick in years, but I figured muscle memory would kick in. That evening, I sat George down at the kitchen table. He was finishing a granola bar and half watching a YouTube video on his tablet. "Sweetheart," I began, "I'm starting a job tomorrow. Actually, 2 jobs." He paused his video. "Jobs?" "Yes, so I won't be home to make breakfast anymore. There's cereal in the second cabinet. You'll have to manage that on your own." His face scrunched up. "But who's taking me to school?" "You are," I said with a smile. "It's a 15-minute walk. You're 10 now. Time to grow up a little." He blinked. "You're mad at me, aren't you? Because of what I said?" I softened. "No, honey, I'm not mad. But I do want to be better. For me and for you." That night, I barely slept. Not because I was worried, but because I was excited. Nervous excited. Like the night before the first day of school. Except this time, I had crow's feet and lower back pain. At 4:45 a.m., I stepped out into the dark. The air was freezing, and the streetlights painted long shadows across the road. I climbed into the delivery van and stalled it 3 times before I got it moving. But I did it. By 7 a.m., I was back home. My hands were freezing, my fingers raw, but I was grinning like a mad woman. By 9 p.m. that night, I started my second shift at the supermarket. By midnight, I had restocked 3 aisles of soup cans and narrowly avoided a concussion when I dropped a box of oatmeal on my own head. By 3 a.m., I was back in bed, too tired to move. That first week nearly broke me. My legs ached, my arms burned, my hips popped like bubble wrap, but I kept going. 3 days in, Henry noticed. He came home at 6 p.m. for once and found me dozing at the table with my dinner half eaten. I looked up, startled, and he stared at me like a math problem he couldn't solve. "Where the hell have you been?" he demanded. "Work," I said simply. "And you didn't think to discuss this with me?" I went back to slicing cucumbers. "Was there a need? If you cared, you would have noticed 3 days ago." He flinched. I wasn't yelling, but I could tell the calm tone rattled him more than any screaming would have. He exploded. "Why now? Why are you suddenly acting like you're single? Don't you care about George? His teacher called me. He hasn't done any homework." I flipped the steak in the pan. "I'm tired. Maybe you can help him." "Help him?" he scoffed. "That's your job." I turned to him slowly. "We're splitting everything now. Money, housework, parenting. Or is that too modern for you?" Henry didn't reply. He stormed into the living room and turned on the TV, blasting the volume like a teenager throwing a tantrum. The next morning, I found a note in the kitchen. "Since you want to play boss lady, figure out the bills yourself. I'm cutting off the household money." It was laughable. Oh no, not the precious $1,000 a month, barely enough to cover groceries and Wi-Fi. What a tragedy. When I got my first paycheck, $1,600 total between both jobs, I cried. Not because it was a lot, but because it was mine. For the first time in over a decade, I was earning money I didn't have to explain or justify to anyone. I sat George down and told him we were getting pizza that night. Really? He gasped. You got paid? I grinned. Yep. So pick your favorite toppings, and guess what? You're getting a new toy. His eyes sparkled. You earned this? Yes, baby, I did. Halfway through his second slice, he paused and whispered, Mom, you don't have to buy me stuff. You're already working so hard. I can wait. I nearly burst into tears right there. Instead, I reached across the table and held his hand. Listen, George, the harder I work, the easier your future will be. That's my job now, to make sure you have choices. He nodded solemnly. I'll study harder too. And just like that, something shifted in our relationship. He wasn't just my son, he was my teammate. The odd thing about working two jobs is that it changes your relationship with time. Hours stretch and compress in bizarre ways. A 10-minute break feels like a vacation, while an 8-hour shift flies by in a blur of barcode scanners and bruised bananas. My sleep came in fragmented pieces. 2 hours here, 3 hours there, like a jigsaw puzzle I never quite finished. Still, I felt more alive than I had in years. I stopped caring what my husband thought. I stopped waiting for him to notice anything. Instead, I created small rituals of joy just for myself. Buying a new pair of socks every Friday, listening to podcasts about crime or mythology while stocking the cereal aisle, and brewing real coffee at 4:30 a.m. before my delivery shift started. Not instant, real. Then something unexpected happened. 3 weeks into my new routine, I came home from the supermarket one evening to find Henry waiting for me in the living room. He wasn't watching TV. He was just sitting there, arms crossed, face tight. Where have you been? He asked. I blinked. Work. Same place I've been going every day. His tone sharpened. You never said anything. You never asked for permission? I laughed. Actually laughed. Permission? He stood up. Don't be smart. What's your end game here? End game? I tilted my head. What does that even mean? He paced. George's homework isn't getting done. His teacher called again. He needs supervision, attention, not a mother who's out playing worker bee just to prove a point. I'm not proving anything. I'm surviving. You think making a couple $100 makes you special? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Henry scowled. Fine. If this is the path you're choosing, I'm cutting off all household funds. No more allowances, no more emergency cash. You're on your own. I shrugged. Thanks for the announcement. And just like that, the invisible leash that had always been around my neck finally snapped. No money from Henry meant no obligations, no invisible debt he could use to shame me. I stood straighter. That's the thing about leashes. They feel heavy until they're done. Then you realize you could have walked away at any time. A week later, I received my second paycheck. This time, I didn't cry. I budgeted. I split the money into 3 envelopes: rent, groceries, and me. Yes, me. I took George to the mall and bought him a winter coat, something warm and fluffy that didn't smell like attic dust. Then I bought myself a new pair of jeans and a bottle of foundation that didn't come from a clearance bin. Nothing fancy, just something that made me look like I was trying. That night, I took another selfie and posted it to Reddit. 1 month into working 2 jobs. Any more advice for improvement, ladies? I'm all ears. It blew up. Comments flooded in. Who is this? Is this the same person? You literally look 10 years younger. Losing weight is like a free facelift. You look amazing. Sunny Bunny 92 returned. Now that's what I'm talking about. Keep going. Don't stop. I felt giddy, not because strangers thought I was pretty, but because they saw effort. They saw transformation. Even Henry noticed. He didn't say anything, but he started hovering more, lingering in the kitchen while I cooked, asking questions about where I was going. One evening, he commented, "You've lost a lot of weight. That dress looks nice." "Thanks," I said flatly, continuing to load the dishwasher. But I wasn't doing any of this for him. The truth is, I no longer cared if Henry found me attractive. I didn't want his approval. I wanted self-respect. I wanted George to see a version of his mother that didn't disappear behind a sink of dishes. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had the day off, a luxury I hadn't enjoyed in a month. I was in the kitchen prepping vegetables for soup when the doorbell rang. I opened it and saw Lucy, Henry's mother, the woman who, during my early years of marriage, referred to me only as that girl and believed the greatest accomplishment of a woman's life was folding a fitted sheet perfectly. She never liked me, never pretended to. Lucy breezed into the house with her usual air of superiority and immediately wrinkled her nose. "Is that all you're making for dinner? George needs more vegetables." I gestured to the pot. "It's tomato soup with grilled chicken and peas." She sniffed. "Peas don't count." Then she leaned down and handed George a small toy. "Grandma brought you a present because I care." George gave her a polite smile. "Thanks, Grandma, but Mom just bought me one last week." Lucy's eyes narrowed. "Did she now? With her new salary, I presume." I could already tell she wasn't here for a friendly visit. She'd smelled change, like a bloodhound, and was now circling the perimeter of her son's household to assess the threat. As we sat down to eat, she poked at her soup with visible disdain. "You know, Henry's father hasn't been doing well. I haven't had time to clean. Maybe you could come by this weekend and help out? You used to do that, remember?" I sipped my tea. "I'm working this Saturday." "What about Sunday?" "George has plans with a friend." "Then take him with you, or leave him with Henry." I smiled politely. "Why don't you clean? Or better yet, why doesn't Henry go?" Lucy blinked again, this time slower, like a computer trying to process a corrupted file. "Excuse me? I mean, you're healthy. You're 60. That's not exactly ancient. And Henry is your son. He can help you." Silence. A long one. George, sensing tension, whispered, "Can I be excused?" and fled with his soup bowl. Lucy stood up, huffed, and stormed out, mumbling something about ungrateful women and ruined traditions. After she left, I laughed so hard I had to sit down. That was the moment I knew my days of quiet obedience were over. Did you know, in 18th century England, a woman could be legally declared insane for expressing dissatisfaction in marriage? It was called female hysteria. Treatment included leeches. Honestly, I'd take a Reddit roast over a leech on the forehead any day. A few days after Lucy's dramatic exit, something unexpected happened at the supermarket. As I was restocking a shelf of canned beans, someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, startled, and came face to face with a woman about my age, with elegant features, striking silver hair tied into a low chignon, and eyes that sparkled like she'd seen both tragedy and triumph, and somehow survived both. "Excuse me," she said, "but are you the lady who posted that picture on Reddit about working 2 jobs after your son called you useless?" My mouth fell open. "Wait, what?" She smiled. "Sorry, that must sound weird, but someone shared your post in a Facebook group for working moms. It made the rounds. You're kind of, well, inspirational." I blinked. "You're kidding." "I never kid before 9 a.m. She extended a hand. "I'm Sunny. I'm a supervisor here, but I used to be where you are." We talked through my break. She told me she'd started as a janitor, worked her way up, and now mentored women looking to rebuild their lives. Her voice was calm, seasoned, but fiercely confident, like someone who'd burned down the old version of herself and built a better one from the ashes. "You have grit," she said, sipping black coffee from a thermos. "Most people don't." I shrugged. "I have exhaustion, and back pain, and bills." "That too," she chuckled, "but I see something else in you. Come by my office Thursday night. I'll give you a crash course in budgeting, digital upskilling, maybe even an internal transfer. Sound good?" It sounded incredible. That Thursday, I showed up to her office, nervous, underdressed, and with a notebook in hand. She handed me a laptop. She said, "Let's talk spreadsheets." That night changed me. Sunny taught me how to build a proper resume, how to schedule emails, how to draft cover letters using ChatGPT, and even how to create a LinkedIn profile. Yes, apparently that's still a thing. "You're not just a shelf stalker," she said. "You're a woman in transition." We met weekly. Each time, she peeled back another layer of fear I didn't know I had. She also gave me books, memoirs by women who'd been through hell and returned with gold. Glennon Doyle, Maya Angelou, Michelle Obama. Each page stitched me together. Then came the worst and best day of the month. It was a rainy Tuesday. I had just clocked out of my milk delivery shift when I passed by a cafe and saw my husband sitting across from a woman, leaning in, laughing. At first, I thought it was his sister, but no. Her hand was on his. His wedding ring was gone. My legs froze. My heart did not. I stood in the drizzle, watching them sip lattes and exchange smiles like teenage lovers. My first instinct was to run inside, cause a scene, scream, but I didn't. Instead, I took out my phone, clicked a photo, walked away. When I got home, I sent the photo to Sunny. I wrote, "This hurts, but I think I'm finally done hurting." She replied instantly, "Good, now we build." And we did. The next morning, I filed for a separate bank account. That weekend, I applied for a work-from-home customer service position Sunny helped me find. A week later, I got the job. 3 weeks after that, I moved out. I packed everything I cared about into 2 suitcases: my clothes, George's artwork, my blender, and one photo album from when we were happy. Then I sat George down. "Honey," I said, "we're moving into an apartment." His eyes widened. "Wait, what about Dad?" "He'll visit, but we're starting something new. A place with rules we make, together." He paused, then nodded. "Do I get my own room?" "Yes." "Can I paint the wall blue?" "Sure." He smiled, then said, "Then let's go." In ancient Roman law, a husband could exile his wife from the home for being too assertive. She could either appeal to a male guardian or walk into the wilderness with nothing. I didn't walk into the wilderness. I walked into a 2-bedroom apartment with an IKEA couch and a heart full of quiet thunder. Our new apartment wasn't much. Second floor, faded carpet, a leaky faucet in the kitchen, but it was ours. George painted his room a bright ocean blue. The first night, we ate takeout on the floor and used a moving box as a dinner table. I lit a $2 vanilla candle and told him it was fine dining. He laughed, mouthful of noodles. "This is actually kind of awesome." I nodded. Freedom always is. That week, I sent Henry a simple text. "We've moved. George is safe. I'll be filing for separation next Monday." No drama, no explanations, just a declaration. His reply came within 5 minutes. "You're being irrational. Come back before you ruin everything." I didn't respond. Instead, I contacted a legal aid organization Sunny had recommended. The consultation was free. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Mira, with red glasses and zero tolerance for nonsense, looked through my notes and simply said, "We've got a case. Emotional neglect, financial abuse. You may be entitled to spousal support, even back pay." Back pay? I nearly laughed. "But I don't want revenge," I said. "I just want peace." "Then we'll get you both," Amira smiled. Meanwhile, Sunny kept showing up in small ways that made a big impact. She'd drop off groceries with sticky notes like, "You're doing great," send me podcast links about women rebuilding after toxic marriages, and even taught George how to make pancakes one Saturday morning while I caught up on sleep. Then one Friday evening, she invited me out for tea. We sat on a bench by the Riverwalk. The air smelled like wet leaves and coming spring. She said, "I have something for you." Reaching into her tote, she pulled out a sealed envelope. On the front was my name. Inside, a check for $2,000 and a handwritten note. "I'm not giving you this because you're broken. I'm giving it to you because you're whole and brave enough to build again. Use this to start your next chapter. No strings attached, Sunny." I stared at the check, stunned. I can't accept this." "You can," she said softly, "and you will." Tears filled my eyes. Why? Because 10 years ago, someone did the same for me. That night, I sat at our tiny table and looked at that check for a long time. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 weeks ago, slumped in a chair, feeling invisible. And I realized something. I was no longer surviving. I was becoming. 2 months later, I stood in a small courtroom wearing a thrift store blazer and clean sneakers. Henry sat across the aisle, his new girlfriend clutching his hand like it was a brand deal. Amira stood beside me, unshakable. The judge asked if I had anything to say. I took a breath and nodded. I gave 17 years of my life to a man who didn't believe in me. I raised our son. I ran the house. I kept things functioning when he checked out. And when I finally stood up for myself, he tried to make me feel guilty for not asking permission. I'm not asking anymore. I'm moving forward. The courtroom was silent. The judge ruled in my favor. Henry's face went pale. Later, in the parking lot, he caught up to me. "You've changed," he said, like it was an accusation. I smiled. "Yes, I have." "You think you're better than me now?" "No, just better than I used to be." He looked at George, who was waiting by the car, holding my hand. "He'll grow up and blame you for breaking the family." I met his eyes, calm. "No, he'll grow up and thank me for showing him what strength looks like." Fun historical fact. In 1911, Clara Zetkin organized the first International Women's Day. Her message was, "We don't want to take power from men. We want to take it back for ourselves." Clara would have loved Sunny. And maybe, just maybe, she'd be proud of me too. A week after the court ruling, I sat in my tiny apartment with the laptop Sunny helped me buy secondhand and a mug of green tea. George was at school, and for the first time in forever, the silence wasn't heavy. It was hopeful. I opened a blank Google Doc and stared at the cursor, blinking like it was daring me to start. What could I do now? What did I have that was mine? The answer came quietly, like a whisper from deep inside. My story. All the pain, the silence, the betrayal, the triumph. I had survived it. And somewhere out there, I knew other women were still stuck in that fog, still thinking they were too old or too far gone to start over. What if I told them they weren't? So I logged into YouTube, created a new channel, and typed the name, Karma Stories Hub. I didn't know what a thumbnail was. I didn't have a fancy camera or editing software, but I had a voice, a story, and a determination that made up for it. My first video was raw, just me in my living room reading a short version of my story. I told them about Henry, about the soup pot, about the Reddit post, about Sunny. And I ended it with this. If you're watching this from a dark place, I want you to know there's a way out. Not all at once, not overnight, but step by step. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. I hit upload, shut the laptop, and braced myself for silence. Instead, the video exploded. It didn't go viral overnight, but women started finding it, then sharing it, then commenting. I'm crying. This is my life right now. How did you know exactly what I needed to hear today? Please make more, please. So I did. Every night after work, I wrote. I recorded. I shared stories, some mine, some sent in anonymously by women around the world. I changed names, protected privacy, but the message stayed the same. You are not invisible. You are not done. You are not alone. Sunny helped me script longer videos. George helped me edit. By month 3, I had 10K subscribers. By month 6, 25K. One day, I got an email from a woman in South Africa. My husband laughed when I told him I wanted to go back to school. Then I watched your video. Now, I'm enrolled in nursing classes. Thank you. I cried reading it. Then I emailed Sunny. You told me I wasn't just surviving, that I was becoming. You were right. I'm not the same woman who stood in your office with holes in her sneakers. I'm someone now. Thank you for seeing me before I saw myself. She replied, You've become exactly who I knew you were, but you haven't even scratched the surface yet. Now go help someone else do the same. So I did. Did you know that in Japan, there's a concept called kintsugi? It's the art of repairing broken pottery with gold because the break becomes part of the beauty. That's what Karma Stories Hub became. Not a brand, a golden scar.
3 months after Karma Stories Hub hit 100,000 subscribers, I got a message from Henry. Henry, I saw your YouTube channel. That story wasn't fair to me. You made it sound like I was the villain. I stared at the screen. A part of me expected the old reactions, anger, shame, guilt, but nothing came. I replied, If you think it's unfair, you're free to tell your version. He left it on seen. A few days later, Henry showed up while I was picking George up from school. He stood on my car, hands in his pockets, trying to channel that old charm I used to fall for. Can we talk? He asked. George frowned. Dad, Mom has to get to work. I'll stop by tonight, Henry said, looking at me. There's no need, I said. Whatever it is, say it now. He hesitated. It's kind of private. There's nothing private between me and the man who once called me dead weight. He fell quiet. Then softly, I know I messed up. I've watched all your videos. You really changed. I didn't change. I just stopped shrinking myself to fit inside your version of me. He gave a weak smile. Things aren't going well. The business collapsed. Jessica left. I nodded, not surprised. I thought maybe we could start over. I looked him in the eye, calm, grounded. I said, You forget. I'm not in the business of fixing what broke me anymore. George sat in the back seat, silent. He had heard it all. As we drove home, he finally spoke. Mom, Dad used to say I was just like you, like it was a bad thing. I glanced at him in the mirror. And now? He smiled. Now I think it's awesome. I reached for his hand. Then I've done my job. A week later, I received an email from a small publishing house in New York. They had watched my From Soup to Strength video, now sitting at nearly 2 million views, and asked if I'd ever considered writing a book. I sat at the kitchen table, stunned. A year ago, I couldn't afford new shoes. Now someone was asking if I wanted to publish my life? I took a deep breath, then typed my reply. Yes, it's time. The title will be The Softest Voice in the Room. Fun fact: in Victorian times, a divorced woman was considered damaged goods and often forced into social exile. Today, she tells her story to millions and turns the cracks into gold. The day my book launched, it rained. Not the soft, poetic drizzle kind of rain, but a full, curtain-pulling storm that soaked your shoes before you got out of the car. I stood in front of the local bookstore holding a single copy of The Softest Voice in the Room, wrapped in a blue ribbon. George was beside me, umbrella in hand, grinning. Think anyone will show? I shrugged. Honestly, no idea, but I'm here. Inside, the chairs were half full, which to me felt like a stadium. I read the first chapter aloud, the soup pot, the Reddit coast, the silence that broke me. By the end, a woman in the second row was crying. Another was holding her friend's hand. After the reading, people came up to talk. Not fans, survivors. One by one, they shared pieces of their lives. Your story helped me leave a man who told me I was nothing. I started a small business after watching your video. I used to whisper in my own home. Not anymore. That night, when I got home, I found a box on my doorstep. Inside, a gold-plated plaque that read, 100K subscribers, Karma Stories Hub, YouTube. I placed it next to the soup pot on my shelf. One evening, a few weeks later, George sat me down in the living room. He held his phone nervously. Can I show you something? On the screen was a video, him, sitting in his room talking to camera. The title? Dear Sons with Strong Moms. He talked about watching me rebuild, about what it was like to be a boy raised by a woman who chose herself, about how real strength looks quiet, patient, and kind. At the end, he said, if you've got a mom like mine, thank her today. If you're a mom like mine, keep going. And if you're a kid stuck in the middle like I was, hang in there. It gets better. I had never cried so quietly and so hard. The video hit 50,000 views in a week. His school guidance counselor called to say it was being used in a support group. George shrugged, embarrassed, but I could see the pride in his eyes. One morning, as I was filming a news story about a widow who turned her grief into a bakery, Sunny called. You free for tea? She showed up with lemon ginger scones and something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Hesitation. What's going on? I asked. She handed me a manila envelope. Inside was a letter, handwritten, old. To whoever reads this, if Sunny ever forgets who she is, remind her. She is more than the woman who lost everything. She is the reason I kept going. She gave me the courage to leave. She gave me the strength to stay gone. M. Sunny looked away. It was from my wife. She died before I started this clinic. I never told you. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I think she'd be proud, I said. She nodded. That's why I helped you, because someone once helped me. I've always believed healing isn't a finish line. It's a relay. And in that moment, I understood. The stories we tell don't just save us, they pass the torch. I never planned to be on a stage again. Yet, there I was, standing behind a sleek podium at the Global Women's Summit in Copenhagen, wearing the same navy blazer I bought at Goodwill the week my YouTube channel hit 10K subscribers. I had been invited as a keynote speaker. Me, a woman who once whispered apologies in her own kitchen just for existing too loudly. George had made me promise I wouldn't cry. I failed about 6 minutes in. But the tears weren't weakness. They were evidence, proof of survival, of truth-telling, of rising.
I told the audience about Sunny, about George, about how it started with a soup pot and a locked door. I told them that the softest voices in the room are often the ones holding up the walls. When I finished, the room stood in silence. Then a slow, thunderous standing ovation. Afterward, a line formed. Women, translators, activists, journalists. Many just hugged me wordlessly. Some pressed notes into my hand. One said, "Your story saved me." But more than that, it reminded me that I was worth saving. The next morning, I woke up to a cease and desist letter in my inbox from Henry. He claimed that my videos damaged his personal and professional reputation. He wanted me to take down everything, every video, every story, every post even remotely connected to our shared history. My stomach dropped. For a few minutes, I felt like I was back in that marriage, being told to be quiet, to take up less space, to apologize. But then I remembered, I didn't name him. I didn't show his face. I changed the details. The stories I shared weren't just mine. They belonged to millions of women. The law, this time, was on my side. So I sent the letter to Sunny's friend, now my lawyer, and returned to editing my next video. She let go, he got loud. A week later, something extraordinary happened. A woman named Reena Kapoor, a philanthropist and media executive from Mumbai, messaged me. She had seen my Copenhagen speech. She said, "I've built dozens of networks for women's empowerment, but I've never seen someone who reaches hearts like you do." She offered to fund a full digital storytelling platform, a safe space for women around the world to share and hear stories like mine. No algorithms, no clickbait, just truth and voice. She said, "You'll be the creative director. We'll call it the Echo Project, because healing echoes when it's heard." That night, I stood in my kitchen, barefoot, staring at the plaque from YouTube and the envelope from Reena. George was doing homework at the table. I looked at him and asked, "Do you think I'm dreaming too big?" He didn't even look up. "Mom, you're literally a superhero now." I laughed. "A tired superhero." He smirked. "Still counts." The Echo Project launched on a quiet Sunday morning. There were no fireworks, no viral trends, just a single email sent to a list of 500 women from 37 countries. Each message read, "You've carried stories in silence long enough. Here's a space to speak or just listen. Welcome home." Within 48 hours, the site crashed. Stories poured in like floodwater. Grief, triumph, betrayal, rebirth. There were stories whispered from dorm rooms in Pakistan, typed from shelters in Brazil, uploaded anonymously from small towns in the Midwest. One video was simply titled, "I'm not angry. I'm just finally not pretending anymore." I spent most of that week curating submissions, approving moderators, designing prompts. It was chaos, but a wholly necessary chaos. I barely noticed the knock at my door. When I opened it, a woman stood there, holding a worn leather notebook. "Hi," she said. "I'm Claire." It took me a second. Claire? Henry's sister. We hadn't spoken in nearly a decade. She said, "I saw your videos. At first, I was defensive. I thought you exaggerated. But then I remembered things I used to excuse, things I saw, things I ignored." She held out the notebook. "This belonged to my mother, your mother-in-law." I froze. She hated me. Claire shook her head. "She envied you." I opened the notebook slowly. Inside were pages of scribbled thoughts, prayers, unsent letters. One line underlined 3 times.
I hope she runs. I hope she doesn't come back. I sat down on the porch steps and cried. Claire sat with me. Sometimes healing doesn't come from apologies. Sometimes it comes from confirmation that your pain was real. Later that month, I was invited to a panel in Seoul on digital activism. Reena Kapoor joined me. So did a professor from Nairobi. Sunny streamed in live from the women's clinic, holding up a baby girl born to a teenage mother who used to watch our channel in secret. George, now 16, helped film everything. He'd started volunteering at a local media club, coaching kids on editing and voiceovers. He said, "I'm just doing what you do." I told him, "You're doing it better." One night, while prepping a video, I got an email from someone named Noah Estrada, a journalist and essayist I admired from afar. "Your work has created a cultural moment," he wrote. "I'd like to write your story if you'll let me." I stared at the screen, stunned. For 2 years, I had been telling everyone else's story, mine included, but this would be different. This wouldn't be me shaping the narrative. This would be someone seeing me from the outside, in full. I said yes. When the profile was published 2 months later, the headline read, "She started with the soup pot, now she's feeding the world." It opened with a line that made me cry on the kitchen floor. If silence were a currency, she would have died wealthy. Instead, she spent it all and bought a generation's voice. I wasn't used to being seen, but I was ready now.